They were the architects of our dreams. Projected onto silver screens at 20 feet high, they were larger than life, yet intimately connected to our deepest insecurities and desires. We called them goddesses. We called them sirens. We called them icons. But behind the satin gowns and the meticulously lit close-ups were women navigating a world that wanted to own them. From the restrictive studios of the Golden Age to the rebellious freedom of the 70s and the intellectual rigor of the modern era, the definition of the leading lady has been written in light, shadow, and resilience. She was the definition of ice on fire. In the early 1950s, amidst a Hollywood that favored the bombastic, Grace Kelly arrived with a whisper of white gloves and Philadelphia high society. Born into a wealthy, competitive family, she fought for her father's approval, a hunger that drove her to the stage. Her breakthrough came not with a shout, but with a gaze. In High Noon, she was the Quaker pacifist, but it was Alfred Hitchcock who unlocked her true power. He saw the tension behind the cool exterior. By the time she won her Oscar for The Country Girl, she had perfected the art of restraint. Her legacy is often reduced to the fairy tale, the actress who became a princess. But her craft was precise. She understood that the camera loved secrets. Her departure from Hollywood at age 26 remains one of cinema's great what-ifs, a career frozen in perfection, untouched by the cruel decline of age in the public eye. If Grace was the ice, Marilyn was the heat. Born Norma Jean Mortensen, she spent her childhood in foster homes, starved of affection. She constructed Marilyn Monroe as a shield, platinum armor of breathy vocals and heavy-lidded eyes designed to ensure she would never be ignored again. Her breakthrough in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes cemented the archetype of the dumb blonde. Yet her comedic timing was genius-level sharp. The world saw a sex symbol. She felt like a commodity. The disconnect between her intelligence and her roles tortured her. She redefined celebrity, becoming the first global media phenomenon. But the industry that worshipped her body disregarded her soul. Her reliance on pills to sleep and champagne to wake up was the open secret of a town that consumes its own. She remains the ultimate tragic muse, proof that being the most desired woman in the world is the loneliest job on earth. She grew up on the screen. From the child star of National Velvet to the seductress of Cleopatra, Elizabeth Taylor lived 1,000 lives in one. Unlike Monroe, Taylor wasn't crushed by the studio system. She learned to manipulate it. She was the first actress to earn $1 million for a single role. Her breakthrough wasn't a single film, but a transition. In A Place in the Sun, she ceased to be a girl and became a force of nature. Critics were often distracted by her scandalous and personal life, the 8 marriages, the diamonds, but her performances in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf displayed a raw unvanity that few beauties dared to attempt. She survived near-death experiences, public shaming, and addiction, emerging as a matriarch of advocacy for HIV/AIDS. She taught Hollywood that a star could be messy, volatile, and magnificent all at once. The world's most beautiful animal. That was the tagline MGM gave her, stripping her of humanity before the real even started. Born in rural North Carolina to tobacco farmers, Ava Gardner possessed an earthy, magnetic sensuality that the studios tried to polish, but could never tame. Her role in The Killers established the definitive femme fatale. She didn't act with technique, she acted with instinct. She hated the pretension of Hollywood, often preferring the company of jazz musicians and writers like Hemingway to studio executives. Her beauty was her currency, but her tongue was her weapon. She lived unapologetically, drinking and loving as hard as any man in the Rat Pack. As she aged, she retreated to London, tired of being the object of desire, leaving behind a legacy of untamable spirit. In a decade dominated by the curvaceous figures of Monroe and Taylor, Audrey Hepburn arrived as a counter-revolution. A survivor of the Nazi occupation in the Netherlands during the Beauties, her slender frame and haunted eyes were born of malnutrition and trauma, not diet fads. Her breakthrough in Roman Holiday offered the world a new kind of femininity, gamin, intellectual, and joyful. She brought the balletic grace of her early training to the screen. She didn't need to undress to captivate, she simply needed to smile. Hepburn used her fame to shift focus away from herself. Her later life as a UNICEF ambassador wasn't a PR stunt. It was the closing of a circle, saving children who were starving just as she once was. She proved that elegance is refusal. Hollywood in the 1950s demanded perfection. The studios owned your face, your weight, and your name. But as the 60s approached, the cracks in the porcelain began to show. The studio system was dying, and a darker, more complex reality was clawing its way onto the screen. Beauty was no longer just about symmetry. It was about survival. Men go to bed with Gilda, but wake up with me. This was the tragedy of Rita Hayworth. Born Margarita Cancino, a Spanish dancer, she was electrolyzed, dyed red, and renamed to fit a white American ideal. Her breakthrough in Gilda was nuclear. The scene where she peels off a single glove was more erotic than full nudity, but the transformation fractured her identity. She spent her life searching for a man who loved Margarita, not the poster on the wall. Her battle with early-onset Alzheimer's, misunderstood as alcoholism by the press, was a heartbreaking final act for a woman who gave her memory to the world. She taught a generation how to whistle. Lauren Bacall was 19 when she debuted in To Have and Have Not, projecting a cynicism way beyond her years. The famous look, chin down, eyes up, was born of nerves. She was trembling so badly she had to lock her chin to her chest to keep her head steady. Unlike the victims of the system, Bacall was a fighter. She stood toe-to-toe with Bogart, both on screen and in life. Her voice, a smoky contralto, signaled a shift toward women who were partners to men, not just prizes. She aged with a ferocity that refused pity, working well into her later years. Jean Tierney possessed a beauty so striking it was almost disorienting. Born into privilege, she seemed to have it all. Her role in Laura made her the face of film noir mystery, but her life was a melodrama darker than her scripts. A tragic pregnancy caused by a fan-breaking quarantine to meet her, followed by severe mental health struggles and institutionalization, derailed her career. She was one of the first stars to openly discuss mental illness, breaking a massive taboo. Her legacy is one of fragile resilience, a reminder that the most beautiful faces often hide the deepest scars. She was the reluctant star. Columbia Pictures hired her as a cheaper replacement for Rita Hayworth and a rival to Marilyn Monroe, but Kim Novak resisted the mold. In Hitchcock's Vertigo, she played a woman being forced to dress and act like someone else, a meta-commentary on her own life in Hollywood. She walked away from the industry at the height of her fame to paint and live in the wild, choosing sanity over stardom. She remains a symbol of the woman who realized the game was rigged and simply stopped playing. If Marilyn was the tragedy, Jane was the camp. She possessed a terrifyingly high IQ and played the violin, yet she built a career playing the dumbest blonde of all. She understood the absurdity of fame and leaned into it, creating the prototype for the reality star. Her breakthrough in The Girl Can't Help It was a spectacle of excess, but the industry treated her as a punchline. Her gruesome death in a car accident at 34 shocked the world, a violent end to a life lived in neon pink. While Hollywood chased bombshells, Jean Simmons brought a quiet, British intensity to the screen. From Ophelia in Olivier's Hamlet to the fervent evangelist in Elmer Gantry, she possessed a chameleon-like ability to disappear into roles. She was the bridge between the theatrical tradition and Hollywood spectacle. She navigated the studio system with a dignity that kept her out of the tabloids, but firmly in the history books of great acting. By the 1960s, the Atlantic Ocean became a cultural mirror. While Hollywood struggled with its censorship codes, Europe was stripping away the artifice. A new kind of energy was arriving, raw, sexual, and dangerously young. She rose from the rubble of war-torn Naples. Illegitimate and impoverished, Sophia Loren was the antithesis of the polished American debutante. She was flesh and blood. Her breakthrough in Two Women saw her playing a mother trying to protect her daughter during the war, a performance so raw it won her the first acting Oscar for a foreign language performance. Loren didn't just survive the 50s, she conquered the 60s, 70s, and 80s. She carried her sensuality into middle age, redefining what a mature woman could be on screen. She was never a victim of her beauty. She was the master of it. Before Bardot, a woman's sexuality on film was performative for men. After Bardot, it was simply a fact of nature. With her messy hair and gaps in her teeth, she was the sex kitten who didn't care if you looked or not. And God-created woman caused riots. The Vatican denounced her. But Bardot grew to despise the attention. She famously retired at 39, retreating to secluded advocacy for animal rights. She viewed her beauty not as a gift, but as a cage she eventually broke out of. She was the dark-eyed girl who grew up before our eyes. From Miracle on 34th Street to Rebel Without a Cause, Natalie Wood navigated the most dangerous transition in Hollywood, child star to serious actress. She bore the immense pressure of a studio mother and a demanding industry. Her performances in Splendor in the Grass and West Side Story captured the neurotic anxiety of American youth. Her drowning death at 43 remains a cloud over Hollywood history, a tragic interruption of a talent that was still evolving. In 1966, a poster of Raquel Welch in a doe-skin bikini changed the aesthetic of the decade. She was strong, athletic, and commanding. But Welch spent the rest of her career fighting to be taken seriously as a comedian and actress. She sued the studios for wrongful termination and won, a landmark victory for women's rights in Hollywood, proving she was far more than a pinup. It is the best-selling poster in history. Farrah Fawcett represented the sun-kissed American dream of the 70s. Her role in Charlie's Angels was a phenomenon, but she shocked the industry by quitting after one season to prove her worth. Her transformation in The Burning Bed, playing a battered wife, stripped away the glamour and revealed a gritty, fearless actress beneath the hairspray. While Farrah was the phenomenon, Jaclyn Smith was the anchor. The only angel to stay for the entire run, she represented consistency and elegance. She leveraged her fame into one of the first successful celebrity lifestyle brands, rewriting the rulebook on how actresses could monetize their image and gain financial independence. She was the 10. In 1979, Bo Derek embodied a specific moment of cultural obsession with physical perfection. Her braided hair and slow-motion run became a meme before the internet existed. While her acting career was limited by the very objectification that made her famous, she remains the symbol of the moment, the supermodel aesthetic, overtook the movie star aesthetic. As the 80s and 90s arrived, the definition of beauty expanded. It wasn't enough to be a face. You had to be a chameleon. The audience became more cynical, and the actresses became more complex, demanding roles that reflected the messy, contradictory lives of modern women. She was so beautiful that critics initially refused to believe she could act. Michelle Pfeiffer spent the 80s and 90s dismantling that prejudice. From the cocaine-fueled tragedy of Scarface to the neurotic brilliance of the fabulous Baker Boys, she proved to be a master of subtext. When People magazine put her on the cover of their first Most Beautiful issue in 1990, it felt redundant. Her face was already the gold standard, but her talent was the real diamond. She is the benchmark. Meryl Streep didn't just play roles, she dissolved into them. Arriving in the late 70s, she defied the beauty standards of the time, relying instead on a technical prowess that was terrifying in its precision. She proved that a woman could lead films well into her 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, not by clinging to youth, but by embracing the complexity of age. She didn't seek to be admired, she sought to be believed. You want to know what comes between me and my Calvins? Brooke Shields was the center of a storm regarding the sexualization of youth. A child model turned global superstar, she navigated a controversy that wasn't of her making. Her survival and transition into a comedic actress and author showed a resilience against an industry that tried to consume her childhood. With strawberry blonde hair and freckles, Sissy Spacek was the anti-starlet. Her performance in Carrie turned the horror of high school rejection into high art. She brought a naturalism to the screen that paved the way for indie cinema. She proved that you didn't need to look like a Barbie doll to command the screen. You just needed to be real. Tall, athletic, and ethereal, Daryl Hannah brought a physical comedy and fantasy element to the 80s. From the replicant Pris in Blade Runner to the mermaid in Splash, she embodied the otherworldly. Her roles often required immense physical demand, showcasing a strength that contrasted with her soft features. From Grace Kelly's restraint to Meryl Streep's transformation, these women did more than just recite lines. They reflected our history back to us. They bore the weight of the male gaze, the pressure of the tabloids, and the cruelty of time. Some were crushed by the machinery of fame. Others dismantled the machine and built their own, but all of them left an imprint that cannot be washed away. They taught us that beauty is power, but agency is the only thing that lasts. When the lights go down and the credits roll, we must ask ourselves, did we worship these women for who they were or simply for who we wanted them to be?